So at this point, because we don't have quorum for peer, this will be an information session, which obviously is being recorded and live streamed, so anybody can go back and get the additional information. We just won't be able to make any motions or pass any motions at this point in time. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll just move forward with the agenda. So obviously we're not going to adopt the agenda or accept the minutes at this point, but we'll just dive right in. Part of the reason that I asked to have this meeting scheduled was twofold. One, what came out of our recent Economic Development Committee meeting, as well as a special events policy that has come forward from the township, which I hope, I did see a little bit of panic about that, but it really was meant to assist local groups and help us manage outside groups. It was really more about outside groups coming in and using facilities without our knowledge and without assistance, which posed problems in certain hamlets and certain settlement areas, I should say. So what I might do is I'll ask the CAO to just do a quick overview of a special events policy and why it's actually meant to help the village groups and the locals who are holding events. Wendy, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we could introduce everybody. It's been a long time and there's people faces I don't know.
Fair enough. Okay, so Megan, you want to start?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Shannon, and I am the clerk.
Go ahead, Trish. Okay, you go ahead then, Steve.
I'm Steve Donachie, and I'm the CAO of the township.
If you want to introduce.
I'm Chris Cunningham, and I'm on the Economic Development Committee.
Ken Davies, I'm here representing the Linter, Sealy's Bay, and District Chamber of Commerce.
Ray Belanger, committee member on economic development.
Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Katie Forrester. I've taken over from Kara at the township office, and I'm also filling in for Kim right now in community and business services.
Okay, Leah.
I'm Leah Fouts, and I own the Tipsy Goat in Lansdowne.
Last but not, there we go. Wendy, go ahead.
Oh, no, Wendy Merkley, Rockport, Rockport Development Group and Customs Project.
And Peggy?
Peggy Sweet McCumber, the Sealy's Bay Area Residents Association.
And Nathan?
And Nathan Richard, I'm on the Economic Development Committee as a new member.
And I think that's everybody. And we have Trish Brown, who's here as our facilities manager as well. So she'll be able to add some additional context to how we are going to be managing facilities coming up for the summer months, and also the grass cutting and all the other fun stuff and flowers. So now that we've introduced everybody, thanks Wendy for asking me to do that. And we'll go to Steve at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Just going to say a few words about the special events policy that was passed by council on April 12th. I think everybody knows the background. As the mayor alluded to, there were events from outsiders coming into the township, just showing up. Essentially, there were fishing tournaments and they were taking over Sealy's Bay and causing quite a bit of disruption to the area and the residents. There was no control. And so when we looked into it, we were lacking any sort of mechanism to control these sort of things from happening. So the special events policy at the direction of council was developed and passed, as I said, on the 12th. It pertains primarily to events that are happening outdoors on township property that are open to the public. And we're looking for events that are either going to have at least a reasonable estimate of 50 people or 10 vehicles and trailers coming. So the 10 vehicle and trailers is to deal with the fishing tournaments. The 50 people is if it's not a fishing tournament, for a sizable gathering. We figured that was a reasonable thing. It also, the special events policy can also apply to events that are happening on private property that may have a potential strain on emergency services, so fire, police, ambulance, impacts on traffic flows, an adverse effect on the local community, elevated health and safety risks for participants or the public, elevated risk to the utilities in Lansdowne, or has needs, has requirements for resourcing from the township. So there are exceptions to this policy. It won't apply to private gatherings that are not held on township property, that are not open to the public. Events that are organized by local schools or churches on their own property or on township property. Events on local school or church property. Events held at professional venues. So if it's a wedding venue, that's what their business is, they're exempt from the policy. Events that are part of a regular recurring business activity or a normal part of business, so sidewalk sales, those sort of things, unless you need a road closure, and then we'd need to be involved on that side of things. The fees in the policy, there's an application fee of $50. If you're a nonprofit or a charitable organization, that fee is waived. But there is also a mechanism in the policy to allow the township to recover costs for example, using the boat ramps, or if we put a staff person to help with the event, or if there's equipment that's being provided by the township to assist with the event, we can recoup our costs on that. Application dates. Ideally, we should have a completed application at least 30 days prior to an event, but as much notice as possible would be great. We appreciate that in this first year of the policy, there's going to be lots of questions. There's going to be learning curves, both on the organizers event, side of things and on the township side of it, the application. We just want to work with everybody and ensure that we have a smooth running event. We'll assist as much as we can with the application. It's going to be new to many organizations, and we appreciate that. But the nice thing is we'll get the pain and the learning curve out of the first year, and subsequent years will go much smoother because we'll have all been through this once before. One thing that people should be aware of is there may be a need for traffic plans and security plans and site plans and emergency response plans and that sort of thing. And that just goes with, it's determinative based on the nature of the event. So if you're planning to host 1,000 people, you need to know what your emergency plan is. You just can't have, oh, we'll just dial 911 if there's a medical emergency. There should be a little more fulsome thought into how are you going to deal with that, and similarly with traffic. How are we going to accommodate 1,000 people? Where are they going to park? How are they going to enter and exit and that sort of thing? So it's going to be, depending on the event and what the expectations are, it can be a big thing like international traffic or international tractor pull that's happening up in North Grenville, or it could be something smaller and a lot easier. So the level of documentation and will vary based on the size of the event. The contacts for on the township side for the policy will be the Community and Business Services Group. So they'll be your point of contact, and everybody's familiar with working with that department. We are developing guidance for how to complete the application and a landing page for our website with all the relevant documentation to make things easy. And of course, we're always available to answer questions by phone or email or come on in. And that's the special events policy in a nutshell.
That's great. I might just add to that if you don't mind, and then we'll take questions from the group if there are any. One of the main things that I found, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this, and Peggy can probably jump in and help me here. One of the reason that we thought that this policy was germane was mainly because often what will happen is that last minute requests will come into the township regarding trash pickup or tent, if somebody was borrowing one of our tents and that sort of things. And then if there's something that's conflicting or something that is happening right afterwards, then it's sort of an organizational nightmare. And we don't want to disappoint anybody. I know that, like I said earlier, there was some concern from local groups that this would become onerous, but really it's meant for us to be more organized as a municipality to serve the needs of the group and the event that's happening. And, what happened, where this sort of came from, there was a fishing tournament that happened on a regular basis in Sealy's Bay, and they just sort of overtook the harbor, parked everywhere, were urinating everywhere. It was quite a gong show, if you will. So due to pressure from one of our councillors about holding some of these organizers to the fire, because garbage was left everywhere, people were parking on people's lawns, there was really no plan. And it wasn't, when we actually went to them and asked them to put the plan together, things actually went very smoothly. So it was a learning curve for us to make sure that we're respecting the locals and their property rights and we don't need anybody peeing on trees after they get out of their boat, which is, what was happening in certain places. And, it just meant it went very smoothly. And I think Peggy can probably attest that once we got in touch with this group and sort of held them to a certain standard, things were much easier and everybody was much happier. Would that be fair, Peggy?
Absolutely. Yes, last year was noticeably much better. And we do appreciate that there are businesses in our community that do benefit from this. So it's important to have these tournaments, but as you say, to control them, because it did get out of hand. So no, I support this new bylaw or this special events, wholeheartedly. Thank you.
And the other event that comes to mind, the two events that come to mind are Lansdowne Fair and the Turkey Fair in Lyndhurst. When you're talking about putting 1,000 people through a small village that doesn't usually have that kind of traffic, and you don't necessarily think of fire response and especially in Lyndhurst with the 1-lane bridge and everybody's walking across it. Luckily, in the past, we've always had fire trucks on either side of the bridge, so we were covered. But it's just to put a little more thought to that, to make sure that if there was an emergency, that we definitely have what we need in order to make sure that everybody's safe. And make sure that we have garbage pickup, make sure the washrooms are clean and open and timely for whatever event. And it could be a small event. We've been asked in regards to an event that's coming to Lyndhurst in May to ensure that we have the washrooms open. And we were planning on that, but knowing that that event is happening, we'll make sure that those are open and able to be used for people who are visiting. So it's not meant to make things more onerous, but really for us to help you as local groups and other individuals who are organizing events, make sure that they have the tools and the support that they need from the township. So, and I'll let Steve speak and then I'll go to Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. What we found last year with the fishing tournaments was there were, I think, 3 different tournaments that wanted to come in. One came back twice, I believe. They were happy to work with us. One didn't. One just decided, no, we're not signing an agreement or agreeing to anything. They liked kind of the, they didn't want to be told what they had to do. The other 2 organizers, and one of them was the main offender that spurred all of this. They were really happy to just understand what what was the expectation, because they were just left to their own devices. And once they knew where the public washrooms were and what the requirements were and what the costs were, we didn't have any pushback really on them. And what worked really well was we put one of the parks kids up when they were putting the boats in, just to direct traffic, to make sure that they knew where they could park and everything. And it went surprisingly smooth. And so I think a lot of the problems that we've encountered are organizers don't know what they need to do, and so this will provide some parameters around the whole thing and add some process to it. So I'm hoping that our first year will go quite smoothly. As I said, our staff is going to work with everybody to make sure that they understand the process and they have a great event. So,
Ray, you had a question?
So I saw this for the first time last night, not having been part of this group. And I got to say, my first impression was my back went right up, and I thought, oh my God, more red tape by the yard coming in here. Now I understand the need for control. That's obvious. But the whole tone of the thing is it's got this whole prissy, what are you guys up to kind of approach, which is, I find, very off-putting. I don't know if the applicants are going to be required to fill out this form, or what the process is in setting it up. But I think what it needs is a companion piece that invites people to have events here and is much more welcoming, rather than just having a straight arm in the face saying, oh, you're going to need an insurance policy, etc. So I don't know how the application format works out online, but I think it needs this fist needs a velvet glove.
That's actually a good point. Anyways, go ahead, Steve.
It is a good point. And that's the purpose of developing a guide to do a step-by-step to get people through the application process. I've been a lawyer for 30 years, and I've yet to see a form that's light and friendly. So, the tone is what the reader's going to read into it. From our standpoint, maybe we want to put the message out to people that aren't part of the township that we mean business. We're a serious organization, and we're not going to kid around. If you're coming into our township to host an event, there's going to be expectations. I think we need to set that tone on that. Having said that, our staff are friendly, courteous people, and we're here to help people achieve their goals. We're not trying to put the handbrake on anybody on this. So we just want to make sure that events are beneficial to our community. They're held in a respectful way for the residents, so that everybody can participate and enjoy in a controlled manner. And by controlled, I mean in a safe way.
I might add to that I think I understand where you're coming from, Ray, from the point of view, why have an event here type thing in the township. And if there was, as you said, a companion piece that went, and that's maybe the guide, part of the guide is, we want you to have events here, but we want to make sure that we support you and we provide whatever services we can to help make your event successful, safe, and we have all the services at hand so that everybody can walk away and know they've had the best possible, because nobody likes to see garbage strewn everywhere. Nobody wants to see bathrooms that are not kept, especially, I think of Lansdowne at the, or even at the Turkey Fair with that many people. When we have those public washrooms now, they'll get used a lot that particular day. So, extra cleaning will probably be required just to make sure that they're kept up. And that's not something that we're opposed to doing. But if we don't have the organization well ahead of time, then we can fall down on that. And then somebody goes to use the washroom and it's in terrible shape. And that's their view of the township, which is not what we want. But maybe that's how we can weave into the companion piece, why you should have an event here. So I've got Chris's hand up. Is there anybody else on the screen that wants to? And then I got Wendy and Susan. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think there are several fishing organizations that sponsor various tournaments. Is there any way that the township could be proactive in this, in the sense that we could either on the website say there is a new policy here for events, or if we could contact some fishing organizations and let them know that we now have a requirement in terms of having some kind of tournament or gathering or whatever in the township.
I think that we have already done that a little bit, but I'll let the CAO respond to that.
That's a great point, Chris. We will be promoting the policy on our website. The fishing tournaments that we have held events in the past will be contacted with the policy and given the new requirements. So yeah, we'll make sure that it isn't going to be a surprise on anybody. At least the events that we don't know are the ones we're going to have to try to be flexible with and make sure that we can get the word out through social media and whatnot.
It's also a small world. So those fishing organizers often will share that with each other because of successes or challenges that they've had in the past. So it's a good point though. So I have Wendy next and then Susan.
I was thinking of groups like the Lions Group and the Rockport Recreation Hall. I mean, they now have the Schoolhouse Jam coming up in June. And I don't know if they're aware of the policy. I wasn't aware of it until last night when I read the agenda. And I was one of those, as the other gentleman said, wow, what's this? And I have to say, Steve, your introduction to it covered a lot more than I read. I didn't read anywhere where it talked about the event venues like the barn and Winter Carnival and things like that. They're not big, but if you now ask volunteers to sit down, and it's a 30-page document that you've got to read before you know how to fill out the form. And it just seemed very overwhelming when I read it last night. So I immediately thought of the Schoolhouse Jam. It says if you have more than one tent, 10 by 10, you need to have a permit, if I read it correctly. As a business, we're having a anniversary party in July, and I expect we might have 100 people coming by boats or cars or whatever off and on over a course of 3 hours. I don't know from reading what I read if I need an event permit to have on private property a anniversary party. So those were things that jumped out at me, and I tried to figure it out. What would we do? What will this rec hall have to do to have their Schoolhouse Jam in June and Winter Carnival? And even if you want to have artists on the dock, so Rockport Customs Park wants to have an artist on the dock every Saturday throughout the summer. What does that mean? Do we have to fill out an event permit to do that? Those were the thoughts that went through my head as I read it last night.
Go ahead, Steve.
So Wendy, on the tent side of things, if it's a tent larger than 60 square meters, I think under the building code, you do need to have it inspected, and there's an application or a permit for that. I'm just looking at Marnie Venditti.
I'm not certain of the exact size for the tent that requires a permit. You have to confirm that, but I believe that in the event policy.
I can't hear who's speaking.
So sorry, Wendy, she's just going to go to a microphone. Our apologies.
Sorry. I'm not certain of the exact dimensions of a tent that requires a permit. I know that in the policy it was cumulative to a certain amount. So it's not just 1 10 by 10. I believe it refers to a number of tents that add up to what the size is under the code that requires a permit. I don't have the policy in front of me, but there's a cumulative standard in the policy.
Right. With respect to the rec center, it's a host venue kind of thing. It'd be like the barn. It does host events.
I think it would be exempt.
I would think it would be exempt too, because it's a hosting venue. So, And with respect to things on the dock, events that you want to have on the dock, we'll look at it and see. But generally, those events are rather small. Even though, you may get more than 50 people coming through. I'd be delighted if you got more than 50 people coming through. But we'll look at that and we'll work with you on it for sure. And I can't say this enough. We don't want this to be an onerous thing. And the application, it's unfortunate, but it's a one size kind of has to fit all. So an event, it's the same application, whether it's going to be 1,000 people coming or if it's going to be 50 people coming. So this is our first iteration with this, and we're fully expecting things to tweak and to change as we get experience working with this. So, there's lots of help here. I can't stress that enough. There's lots of help here, and we'll get through this together. And but we really do want to facilitate having a safe event and letting people have events that are beneficial to the community. So
I'm going to recognize Susan next, and then I'll recognize you, Chris. Go ahead.
Mute.
Oh, Susan, you're muted, hon. You usually go to the bottom of the screen, or maybe can the clerk unmute you? Oh, there you go. You're unmuted now.
Sorry. Good morning, everybody. My concern, like Wendy, was how onerous the form was. When you do the turkey fair, I'm sure you have to appreciate that we have over thousands of people coming into the village in a day. And the Turkey Fair Committee has been very, very good about making sure there is not a scrap of garbage left on anyone's lawn or on the street or anything. They take it to the dump, they take care of it, they cover it all with their costs. And this, like, we set up several tents, we set up several platforms for entertainers. We use several private properties in the community. And it's all done with approval of the owners of the properties. But now we have to fill in the form, we have to do the site plan. I mean, there is a huge amount of labor involved in filling in this application for something like the Turkey Fair. And I think they feel, I shouldn't say that. I felt when I read it last night that it was almost like, well, you guys have not been, doing what you're supposed to do. So now we have to police you on this. And it just felt a little heavy-handed. I thought, this has been a community event that just tons and tons of people volunteer and tons of people volunteer their property and that sort of thing. And there haven't been problems. We hire people to stand on either side of the bridge to make sure there's a traffic flow and, that sort of thing. We make sure the police are there. We call them and organize it, and make sure that we rent porta potties and have them all over the village. So there isn't, so it's not just the washrooms in the park. Anyway, so I just felt it was going to be hours of labor for these already overextended volunteers to fill in this permit. I had visions last night when I started reading it of having to go to each house that we do and get written permission from each private property and do the site plan alone would take hours for something like this. So that's my comment. I just wanted to let you know that, because I think it may, we're in a situation at the moment where people have sort of been away from it for a couple of years. And I think, in little communities like ours, we lose a lot of volunteers when things like COVID came along. And so I think my worry is that we're going to have a tough time getting people coming back anyway. And now it might just be, oh, forget it. It's just, it's too much hassle. It's just, so that's my worry. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Chris, and then I see Nathan's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm curious as the next one of the next big gatherings in the township is at the end of May, and it's the Festival of Small Halls. And I think there are two concerts in Sealy's Bay on a Saturday night and a Sunday night. I don't know if there's another one in the township, but I'm curious, like, do they, as the Festival of Small Halls, are they in touch with you? How do you liaise with them?
Go ahead.
I believe the festival is all held indoors.
Yep.
we're not, they're renting our facilities and will be subject to the terms of the rental agreement. So the policy wouldn't apply.
Okay, thank you.
This is for outdoors. I'll let Peggy respond to that in regards. I know she's involved.
Yeah, I'll just clarify that. Yes, Small Halls works with the Sealy's Bay Residents Association. So they just don't come in and take control. We are the sort of sponsoring body. And so we would make sure that the township has all the, the proper papers that they need. So yeah, no, that Small Halls is, works well with us.
And I don't think I'll be so bold as to say your comments, Susan, are taken to heart. And we wouldn't want a forum to be the reason why an event didn't happen. And we would work with the group. And that's why we have staff here to help assist those people. So people like Katie and Kim Goodman and McKenna have been extremely good to assist businesses throughout the pandemic, as well as less so the not-for-profit organizations, because there's been very little that's happened, as you've said. But, please don't let that be a deterrent, because as much as Steve has said, this is our first iteration and we may not have got it right the first time, but we'll work with everybody to make sure that this doesn't become such an onerous process that people are so frustrated that they don't want to have the event. And Nathan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Through you. It looks like a lot of time has been spent to put this together. I certainly recognize that. And I think that, certainly if sitting on the legal side, anything can happen in one of these events, right? And nobody wants that, anything terrible to happen at an event. So I can appreciate, that there's why there's so many questions and all the different things that are asked. But then on the other side, I do recognize as well that if you have 1,000 people show up in your community, there's going to be extra effort that the town staff are going to have to do, and you want to plan for that and have that scheduled ahead in advance, not just call somebody up on call at the last minute. So I can appreciate that side of it. And then again, I think on the other side is that, as Susan was indicating, a lot of people volunteer their time for these events, and volunteers are powerful, important people in communities, and I think it's important to have them involved in what how they perceive something like this and how they would actually kind of go about filling it out. So I think there's maybe a gradual process there that maybe would go in place that would help people understand it, instead of just kind of saying, here's our 20-30 page document, go away and come back, and maybe they'll just go away and never come back. That can happen as well if you start to really control everything that's happening. That can get really disappointing for volunteers, I think. So I think it's a bit of a sensitive item, I think, on that side of it. So
okay, thank you for your comments on that. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to the special events policy? Oh, Katie, go ahead. The one who's going to deal with it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add as well that we are planning information session, a virtual Zoom call next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And we will record that. So we'll have information available, and we'll continue to work with inquiries as they come in. But we are planning that in addition to putting our applicant guide together, which will be in much friendlier, plain language, and hopefully take some of the burden off of the process as well.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, so since we've exhausted 6.1, which is special events policy, we'll maybe move on to 6.2, which is the events directory. And Katie, I'll just have you continue on the same vein.
Great, thank you. Through you. We've been working in our department to sort of do a roundup of some of the events taking place in the township and in the surrounding area this summer. We've been trying to add all of these events onto our municipal website. Our calendar has been growing, and it's becoming a bit more of a resource. we're very pleased to see the return of a lot of these in-person events that add vibrancy to our communities. Especially reassuring seeing some of the annual events returning, community organized different events in different villages. Next weekend, the fire department is putting on their bullhead fish fry. It'll be my first time trying a bullhead. In May, we're celebrating Public Works Week with a Touch a Truck event on May 17th. And some other reoccurring highlights are the plant sale, the May long weekend, the plant sale in Lansdowne, and Big Bay Day in Sealy's Bay. And of course, the Red Canoe Fest and Small Halls Festival the following weekend. And in July, Canada Day celebrations will return in person this year. They'll be celebrated in Sealy's Bay and in Gananoque. Some of the highlights hosted by community groups are the Light It Up event and the Schoolhouse Jam. Some events for youth are a youth fishing derby and the end of year summer party that we're going to be hosting at Kendricks Park. In August, the American Graffiti event will return to Sealy's Bay, and that involves a classic car show in the streets. And a huge event for the region, as Steve mentioned earlier, is the International Plowing Match, will be held in North Grenville in September. And already the township's planning to have a presence at that event and bring an interactive in-person experience. Happy to answer any questions. But like I said, right now we're just trying to do a big roundup and make sure all of the information is available on our website. For anybody who subscribes to our events calendar, they can get a weekly email. I believe it's on Thursdays, and it just reminds you of all of the upcoming events the following week.
I see Leah's hand up. Leah, go ahead.
Sorry.
There we go. It's all good.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the events directory. I've noticed more communication on that stuff in social media, and it helps me plan events for my store. And I just, I think it's a great idea to have, and it really does help have everything listed there. And I'm glad it's being communicated in a solid form like that.
Thank you. I know Katie's worked very hard to collect all that data. But of course, if you know of any other events or things that are happening, please let us know so we can add them. And we'll make sure that it gets communicated out. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When is the Bullhead Fish Fry?
April 30th, I believe. And it's a drive-through, unfortunately, this year. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm just glad that it's happening. It's always been definitely a community thing here in Lansdowne, and it's here at Station 1. I'm glad to see they let women in now. So sorry, I had to get my job in because as a kid, I remember my father going to the Bullhead Supper. It was a men's night only type thing for years and years and years. So they made that transition, I think about 10 years ago that they let the women in. So I always have a giggle over that. But it is a drive-through. We're trying to limit gathering at this point, and usually there's about 300 people that show up for that. So this year it'll be a drive-through just because of the rising COVID cases and that sort of thing, just to keep, hopefully not have a super spreader event here. That's what we're trying to avoid. I think that's April 30th at 1 o'clock. When is it, Katie? Do you recall? Excuse me.
I believe it was at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, 1 o'clock. So anytime after 1. It's also on the sign at the fairgrounds as you're driving through the village. Okay, so like I said, Wendy, go ahead.
When it says TLTI in kind, what does that mean?
things that we supply, things like garbage bags, extra garbage cans. We could provide the tent free of charge, you know, the TLTI tent that we lend out. That's an in-kind, you know, anything that we can provide you supplies wise.
Okay.
To not-for-profits, we've always done that, and I think we'll continue to do that. That's what it means in kind.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions in regards to the events directory? Okay, we'll go forward with wayfinding signage project. That's Katie as well.
Great. I'm excited to share. This is sort of a good news project. Through funding, through OMAFRA, through the Rural Economic Development Program, we were able to partner with Front of Young and the town of Gananoque and go in together on organizing some wayfinding signage. So in TLTI, we will see 10 directory posts added throughout the township, and they direct visitors and residents to such things as libraries, parks, business areas, public washrooms, public docks, and points of interest. We're working with a local company to fabricate these signs, and we're hoping to install likely in the fall.
So thank you for that update. I know that this group, we've talked about wayfinding signs forever. So I'm grateful to see the project moving forward. It's a little bit disappointing that we're not able to do it prior to summer, but I think it's a timing on the fabrication thing for the supplier. But it comes down to the fact that it's finally getting done, and we're grateful to OMAFRA for that funding, as well as the partnership with Front of Young and the town of Gananoque, as bulk ordering is a bit more cheap in the grand scheme of things. Susan?
Yeah, I just was wondering, does that include the street signs? We've been talking, for years ad nauseum about the street signs with the indicators for things like the dock in Lyndhurst and that type of thing. And I know we've had that on paper for maybe 8 years now. And we did buy one sign, the village bought one sign, and then the township had asked us to back off because they were going to do a township-wide design. So does this include that? Is this part of the wayfinding?
Katie, I do believe that you'd mentioned that.
I don't think that it's probably as thorough as you may have been planning. They do indicate area attractions, but nowhere on the post does it have a street name signage.
So,
okay, so our community group was, we put together a budget and so on for some signs that we wanted to have installed in the village that were street signs, and on the post we had chosen an old-fashioned design that sort of made sense with the village, and on the post we had things like canoe dock or swimming area or whatever attached to the sign. And we had put a fair amount of labor into finding the design, finding the manufacturer, and so on. And it was approved at the time, and we did order one, which was quite expensive. But before it got installed, the township said, no, we've decided to go with a different design, so we'll just keep your sign in the building out back and hang on to it until such time as we're ready to do all the signs. So is there any conversation about that at all?
Susan, I would think that it would make sense for us to link, if you could find the documentation on that and forward it to our Director of Operations, Dave Holiday. Okay. Dave is definitely a doer and a solution kind of guy. So I don't want to say that he'll be able to make all your dreams come true in one meeting.
But the one sign that we have, that we paid for, that's been sitting in the township building, maybe that could be installed at least.
we can find out, we can try to locate it and get a hold of, oh, Steve's got a note here.
I believe that sign was already installed on Jones Street.
Jonas?
Jonas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I've been away and we've been sort of out of the loop because of the whole COVID thing. So it isn't something that we had a chance to have a conversation about before this meeting. So thanks. I'll work up from my end and see what the conversation should be.
Well, and I think it begs another conversation. There's been a lot of staff turnover since the time that you have indicated when that first was brought forward. That might have been under Amy Webb when Amy was here with economic development, or earlier than that, way before that. I've only been here 3.5 years, so but it's not to say that we can't have these conversations. And like I said, the operations director is very great to work with, and I know that this wayfinding sign project is certainly not comprehensive and will cover every single thing we have in the township, but it was a start and will hopefully allow us to get sort of a theme and work with the same sort of signage, because it's the consistency piece is what we're looking for across the municipality. So it all looks unified. But having directional signage to boat launches and washrooms and tennis courts or pickleball courts or what have you, it's important for people who don't live here on a regular basis if they're bringing people in type thing. Any further comments in regards to the wayfinding signage project? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to community grants update. Katie, are you covering that as well? Okay.
Yeah, so the application period, the spring intake, closed on April 1st. We were happy to receive a number of applications. Approximately 20 applications were received, and these grants provide a modest level of support to community not-for-profit and charitable organizations, and really support these groups that are doing wonderful work across the township. We received a variety of applications, some related to events, programs, improvements of properties. Not every application fit with the guidelines of the program, but we're going to continue to work with these groups and strengthen their applications and try to have discussions about the criteria. The council will review the applications and make the final selections next month. And another intake will occur in the fall. The deadline for that is Friday, September 2nd. And successful applicants from both intakes will have their final reports due back next at the end of March next year, March 31st next year.
So does anybody have questions in regards to the grants? I know that we've not had the grants for the last couple of years due to COVID and budget constraints, but very pleased the council was very pleased to put this back in place this budget cycle. So go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How much does the township allocate to community grants?
I think my brain is on 2019 numbers, so I don't want to say. Go ahead, CEO.
We did increase it from previous years. I want to say it's 120,000.
It was 125,000, or I think it was 125 that we increased it to. I think it was at 80,000. And we've funded everything from children's programs to individuals that competing at national, provincial, and national levels. What else? I'm just trying to, like, local groups like the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, all of those things that if there's something specific, I think we also, the Thousand Islands Residents Association, we funded a number of different things, but we cut back in 2020 because it's all of the funding, just for everybody's context, the funding was always coming from the casino funds. And when the casino shut down during COVID, that was when we didn't have casino funds anymore. So of course we had to cut back. And the silver lining for general purposes was the fact that a lot of these community groups were working at very limited basis and the need wasn't necessarily heightened at that point. Now coming out of COVID, we're seeing, obviously more and more groups wanting to do bigger and better things. So we'll double check the values, but Katie, is that correct? And how much this intake would be 62.5? And that's the amount that we usually divide it up 50-50 based on each intake. So there's up to 62,500 available this intake, correct?
I believe that we weight the first intake slightly higher. I think it's a 60-40, but the total amount for the year is correct at 125.
Thank you. Any other questions in regards to the community grants? Go ahead, Wendy.
I may have missed it, but when do people hear? They had to be in by the 1st of April. When do people hear if they were successful or not?
Through you, Madam Chair, after the deliberations at council, all applicants would be contacted with the outcome.
So that's the May meeting. The May council meeting, or the May committee of the whole, I should say. So that's coming up in another couple of weeks. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other community grants questions? Seeing none, we'll go for a budget update. Who's doing that? Katie? I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
I'm not sure I could speak much to the budget of this committee. I do know I read in the notes that the annual disbursement to the community groups, it's regularly $2,000, but it's been increased this year, a one-time expanded support to $3,000. And we know that that will be put to wonderful use in the community.
I don't know if that's been processed yet. I don't recall signing those checks, but that's not to say that I sign a lot of checks, like a lot. But I don't recall those being sent out yet. So we'll make a note to follow up with Kate and the finance staff to ensure, because I know a lot of the local groups use it to fund insurance and websites and those sorts of things. So we'll commit to having that done. Go ahead.
Just a brief comment on the larger budget side of things. We were able to get into the market thanks to council passing our township operating and capital budgets in November. We were able to get out early for our procurements for buying all the things that we buy during the course of the year. And it's given us a really good head start. As everybody understands with COVID, the price of everything has gone up and things are in short supply. Being able to, for example, I think I saw something that Rideau Lakes just passed their budget just last week. So we're essentially 4 months ahead of them or 5 months ahead of them on the procurement side of things. So our operations department has been busy acquiring all the things that they need to get. We've added a new mower to help with the grass. We're looking forward to the summer students starting in the end of May into June, which will help us as well stay on top of the grass cutting and looking after the parks. And so it's been a really good start to the year as far as getting out there and securing the supplies that we need to run the township with.
Well, that's a great segue right into staff update. I wouldn't mind if Trish would be willing to put her microphone down and actually speak just a little bit about the summer students and the contingent that's coming on and what the plan is for flowers, grass cutting, and flower maintenance.
All right, so this year operations has hired 8 students to help maintain the parks. 4 are returning and 4 are new. So we do have some, about half of them will be starting about May 10th because they're university students, so they will be starting sooner. The remainder are high school students, so we don't expect them until beginning of July. We're very happy about the new mower, especially for helping with all the cemeteries, because we have it's a zero turn, so it's a very nice new mower. I know Katie has hired 4 park staff, so she has a couple of university students and a couple of high school students as well. We have done a bit of a change with all of the horticulture, so we will have 1 student who's primarily horticulturist who will be able to help any of the community groups if they let us know ahead of time with planting, because we will be, I know I've been talking to Katie about it, we will be providing about 4 or 5 flats of flowers to each of the 5 communities in the township, a variety of colors, for sure yellow, white, blue, pink, and hopefully a red or a purple. We are getting those from 2 local growers, so which will be nice. All of our village signs have been planted with perennials, so we are hoping that they will be coming up. We have a variety of colors. They're all native plants. They are all pollinators. They are all about birds and bees and butterflies. So we're hoping those will be a little less maintenance, and we will be able to, at some point, split those, provide them to our community groups for any of their gardens for use anywhere they would like to use them. We do not have a date yet for when we will have the flowers ready for pickup, but I'm sure Katie will be reaching out to you when we do get them. And they will be brought here to the township office, the Public Works garage, so we can either have you pick them up or we can have them delivered out to you on whatever day it is you'd like to start planting.
Well, thank you very much. Peggy, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, watering. That's always the big
Oh,
question.
right.
Yes. Is the township prepared to water our plants this year?
Yes, just like last year, we will be watering again. We have 1 student dedicated to doing watering and maintaining all the gardens. So they will be driving around with the watering truck as long as we have a good idea as to where you have put them all. I would assume in Sealy's Bay, it'll be in the same locations, Haskell's Point, the fire hall, down at the docks. But yes, as long as we know where they are, they will get watered on, and we will monitor and see how they're doing. If they need to up the amount of water based on how much sunlight or how much exposure there is, then we're willing to work with you. But we do need you to help us with that, because these are students. They don't necessarily clue in if we need more watering.
Not everybody's a fantastic gardener like Trish is, so it makes it a lot easier with her guidance. Go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah. So Trish, are you the go-to person in terms of feedback?
Well, it'll be Katie and myself, because it's one of those things that kind of overlaps, because I'm overseeing the park students, but Katie, because this is a community service. So either Katie or I will work, because we're in communication all the time about it. So as long as you can get a hold of one of us, we usually let each other know so that we're both on the same page.
Thank you.
So it's very refreshing to have this so organized and so ready to go, because usually we'll spend hours on this discussion. So this is a lot to do with Trish and with Katie and how well they work together. And I think we ironed out a lot of kinks last summer with the summer students and how they were managed. So Wendy, I think I saw your hand up. I just need you to unmute yourself. Oh, there we go. There.
Would it help if we did a map of where the flowers are in the village?
That would be fantastic. We have, we did do maps for our summer students last year, so they didn't get lost. You know, they end up in Sealy's Bay and down in Rockport, and they're not sure where they're going. So they do have maps with cemeteries and everything else. So yes, absolutely. If we know which gardens, then they know which ones they need to be getting to. Wendy, that would be great.
Okay, we will do that.
Awesome.
Susan?
I just want to say yay, 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 Trish and Katie. This is always such a big thing at every peer meeting, and it's such a relief. And I'm also really, really thrilled to hear that you're using native plants and perennials and that sort of thing. So yay, this is great, because I really think it's a huge impact on our little villages. You know, when those flowers don't look nice, the villages just look so tired and so dull. And it's always such a treat to come in and see the nice flowers. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that feedback. I think one of the things that we're going to talk about later on in other businesses in regards to community improvement plans, it's part of the reason the Economic Development Committee is here. But speaking to what Susan just said in regards to the first impressions that people have, it's so important that we do the best we can, especially on township property, but also other areas that some of the community groups have taken over to beautify the area, that we all work together to make sure that the best first impression is the best first impression we can give people when they're in the area. So is there further staff update? Katie, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, through you, I just wanted to add that our community recreation guide is fresh from the printers and should be arriving at your doorstep shortly, if not already. We added a little bit of new information this year, and all the good stuff from before as well. The guide covers all information about our 7-day use parks, area hikes, points of attraction, how to access the water. We also included information this year about the Ontario Staycation Credit for anybody who's using an Ontario accommodations, which does include camping as well. We've added some information about fishing and open license dates, information from our Driftscape app, where you can find historical walking tours. We included some information from our operations department, some updates and planned improvements this year, and a little bit of information about the economic benefits of recreation in the community and making our community an attractive area for relocation. I also just wanted to add that the splash pad in Lansdowne is scheduled to open Friday, May 20th. It'll be open this year from May 20th until Labor Day weekend. It's open every day from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. As we mentioned earlier, preparations are underway to open the public washrooms in May. The Sealy's Bay Harbor, we're now accepting applications as well for seasonal or monthly holders. We will also have transient slips throughout the season. In the harbor area on Bay Street, there are some planned improvements this year, including the replacement of a storm culvert on Bay Street and paving the parking lot, which will include a marked accessible spaces in the loading, unloading parking lot. There has been an increase in the harbor rates this year, and we are continuing to evaluate and make sure that we are running this service at fair market value. And just a reminder too, that all of our facilities are available for rent. We're operating back at full capacity right now. And so that would include meeting rooms, our community halls, and our pavilions. And anybody can do an online facility booking request at any time. We have a software program called eBase. It's accessible through our website, or of course, just telephone or email into the office, and we would be happy to help.
Excellent.
That's about my update, unless anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the staff? Okay, so we'll move on to the council update. I'll try to be as brief as possible for this so that we can get on to the other business. I'm very pleased, and Steve, our CIO, has already brought it up. Our council was able to pass the budget in one sitting in November. Part of the reasoning for that efficient process was mainly due to the hard work of our treasurer, Kate Tyndall, and Director of Operations, Dave Holliday. in creating a very comprehensive asset management program. Without boring you of the details of asset management, it really is a critical tool that the provincial government has required us to embark down that path in a much more hands-on way. And we spent a considerable amount of money on a software citywide that has required input. So a lot of data that needed to be input right down to every fire hydrant we own as a municipality. And what that does is it helps us forecast. It's not perfect, but before it was a number of spreadsheets that were supposed to talk to one another and a lot of guesswork. So now this program, as we feed more and more data into it, the more efficient we are going to be able to budget and make sure that we have sufficient funds in the future to replace things like community halls, fleet for trucks and plows and that sort of stuff, pavilions, boat ramps. We have embarked on a number of big projects as well. Very proud to say that we've secured land for station number 2 up in Sealy's Bay to be replaced at the corner of Highway 32 and Highway 15, which will provide us with better coverage as well as more efficient and effective access. One of the things that somebody might not know is that one of our pumper trucks that we use in Sealy's Bay, we're lucky to have the Sealy's Bay facility and it's been there for many years, but it's right in the middle of the village, which sometimes can pose a safety concern when you're talking about moving quickly, especially right across from the retirement residence. But one of the pumper trucks has to be full of water in order to get into the bay. That's how, the trucks have changed over the years. So it's just a challenge for us to grow. And I believe that our calls, if you look at our historical calls, we have a higher and a greater need for the equipment and being able to respond to those calls in a timely fashion. So that process has been started at council. We have completed the Rockport ramp as of last fall. Yay. It only took how many years, Wendy? But we got it done. And we were pleased with the work that I believe White was the last name that they completed that. And why is this important to peer committee? I see your hand, Wendy. Just 1 second. This is important because, again, when we're talking about first impressions and people coming to our area, people are coming from all over the province and some from Quebec and the States and wherever else. And that's how they access our waterways. So having proper access there is so critical. There's now a dock that's going to be installed on the rock wall so that we're not competing with the boat line because that was part of the challenges in that regard. But it was a long time coming, and it really just took somebody like David Holiday to come in and quarterback it and throw the touchdown. So we were very, very pleased. So Wendy, I'll let you speak to that.
You answered my question about, is there a dock going in? The number one question I get is, where do those steps go? Is there a dock going in there? And I say, I think so, but I haven't confirmed it. So Thank you. And it is, I have to say, yes, it took a long time, but thank you. It has improved the whole appearance of Rockport and the accessibility for people to get on the waterway. And it looks great. Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lastly, I'll just say that we have also secured in January, we closed on a piece of property in Ivy Lee that will become a parking area for those accessing water and for islanders wanting to have visitors. They can come to the dock, pick up their guests, and the guests can have a place to park on the mainland. We are also undertaking a total rebuild of the Ivy Lee Wharf. And this is a pretty considerable project. And a lot of people might ask why we're spending such a large amount on such a, maybe a small asset in some people's view. One of the main reasons why that wharf exists is for contractors to get back and forth to islands for property maintenance and building and what have you. Not only that, we'll also have slips that we will be able to rent to to island owners. There's not going to be a ton of them. I want to say there's going to be about 9-ish, but I know that Wendy is abreast of this information as well. We lost a number of local slips that were available for rental. One of the businesses took out their rental, and really they were a lot of islanders. And we have no desire to compete with the local businesses. We will be charging fair market value, and we won't be undercharging. But it's rather to put those dock space back into the pool, if you will, to allow people to access their islands. And a lot of those island owners often talk about, the taxes that they pay and what they get for it. And this is a perfect example of the way that the municipality is putting money back into benefit island owners and the people who work on the water, the local contractors who need this access to load, aggregate, and what have you. Unfortunately, during one of these loading sessions, the wharf was badly damaged. As somebody basically dropped a hi-ho and smashed the concrete. So now, mind you, the dock is in need of repair. It's well over 50 years old. So we're spending a couple $1 million probably at the end of the day to get that done. But there's a sign in my office that I've had since I was elected, and it says good things take time. And I didn't realize how important that was until something like the Rockport ramp is a perfect example of we got it right. And it took a long time, but we got it right. And we made sure that that particular facility benefits not only visitors, but also business owners that use that as access to the waterway. So I could go on forever in regards to council work, but I am very proud of the staff that continue to bring forward timely reports in regards to different issues that might be coming forward. But like it was said earlier, in regards to the special events policy, we're always open to criticism and critique to make things better, easier, faster, more efficient, and we'll definitely take those things to heart. But if anybody has any council questions, I'm happy to answer that. And if not, we'll move on to other business. Okay, we're going to move on to other business. So the elephant in the room is, why do we have the whole of the economic committee here? We had an economic development committee meeting 3 weeks ago. And one of the things that we talked about was about first impressions. And when it comes to economic development and wanting people to come here and stay here and spend, is the first impressions. So obviously Pier has always been sort of the quarterback on the flower side of things and making some local improvements with the local groups. I know Sealy's Bay works hard, Rockport works hard, Lyndhurst works hard. They've all done things over the years to make the villages look better. There is a small pot of funding in economic development, which was set aside for some work to be done at the Economic Development Committee level. But it was discussed that what it is something that we could do to help local businesses and to increase visibility and make it more inviting. And that's where the community improvement plans had come up. It's something that we had talked about doing long ago, but due to COVID and the lack of staffing regarding this, it's a pretty big undertaking. Having said that, we know that the community groups have the best interest of the settlement areas at heart. And if there was projects that needed to be done locally that would help, then perhaps the Economic Development Committee can bring back a recommendation to council to help fund some of that. And that was part of the discussion, because there's such a small amount of time left on this mandate of council. They wanted to, mandate of the committee, what is the best way to efficiently spend those funds? And if there was opportunity to do it in a local way to help build better impressions of the local hamlets, then perhaps this group would have suggestions. I'll just bookend it by saying there's a couple of things that we didn't talk about a whole lot. The international plowing match that's happening in September, I believe it's the 17th to the 22nd. I'm always getting those dates wrong, but I'll look it up. The international plowing match, while it's happening in Kemptville, is being marketed to all of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. Because Kemptville does not have a lot of hotels, they have one in all of the area. They are trying to direct as many people to stay locally. That would be Brockville, Gananoque, Lansdowne, and Prescott, that sort of area. So the goal is to get people to come to the international plowing match, but also take day trips and spend time and effort and money in the local areas. So part of us renewing our settlement areas would be to attract people at that point. We also were lucky, and not lucky, I shouldn't say. We were fortunate to have received funding from the Ministry of Agriculture for a Wanderer app. And if you have time to take a look and see what that is, it's basically a directional map, but also with fun little videos and cameos and things that we do to showcase the businesses and the attractions that we have in the area. So in partnership with the town of Gananoque, we secured, I believe it was a $45,000 grant. And between the Chamber of Commerce in Gananoque and funding from our municipality in Gananoque, I think we have $90,000 to put into that project. And it's directly to showcase the businesses, their history, what they do now, why they've been here, why you should visit them. And they're going out to tender for the Wanderer, if you will. So there's an individual that goes around and showcases those businesses on social media, as well as video and those sorts of things. So I'll put it out to the group. If there's any specific projects that come to mind that need a small amount of funding that we could pick off and bring back to the Economic Development Committee for consideration. Peggy, and then I'll go to Ken.
Yes, I will have to take this to the group. It's I'm just hearing about it now. How much are we talking about?
I think there was $10,000. What was it, Marnie?
There was at least five.
There was at least $5,000. I think that was we had earmarked it for a study for an abattoir, but we know that we would not be able to complete that prior to the end of the year.
There's potentially some other funds that we'd looked at, other things as well that could be redirected. And there's also, we had indicated through discussion at the EDC committee that if necessary, we could come back to council with a recommendation to allocate additional funds. So it's not a bottomless open fund, but we're willing to entertain and bring that discussion forward in terms of what there might be.
So as I said earlier, community improvement plans are a little more comprehensive, but the Economic Committee, Development Committee was looking for projects that might be able to be executed in the next 6 months. And if there was funding opportunity, would that be helpful and to the local communities to get that done? But that they just need to be made aware at the Economic Development Committee to bring a recommendation back to council. I believe that one of the things that is happening, if I'm not mistaken, is the viewing platform in Lyndhurst. Is that moving forward already? Trish?
I don't have a set deadline on that, but yes, they were talking about doing the viewing platform in between on the trail between Furnace Falls and Jonas Street, the park.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that that was already indicated that that is being funded and moving forward already. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a small amount of money. I wonder if we might dedicate that to successes that we have that are already existing.
Can't hear Chris.
Oh, Chris, if you want to move closer to the
It's a
microphone.
small amount of money, perhaps too small to seed a new idea. I wonder if we could dedicate this money to 6 successful ventures that we already have, like the Turkey Fair. The Small Halls, for instance. Small Halls there's nothing about Small Halls that talks about our township. It's an Ottawa-based thing, and that it's terrific, but it's not. We should have more of an imprint on that, I think. So I'm just throwing this out.
Okay.
Small amount of money dedicated to things that are already working well.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing though is that even though there's only 5,000, we know right off the bat, if there were other projects that were more costly and needed more support within reason, like Marnie said, there's not a bottomless pit here, but if there were further projects in the local communities that would help revitalize or maintain existing facilities, that would help bring people here or just show a better side of our settlement areas, we're willing to consider it. So we have an economic, I see Leah, at next week's Economic Development Committee, if there were anything that were to come up between now and then, if any of the members of PEER could reach out to Katie or Marnie, and we will bring it to the Economic Development Committee in the meantime. I realize that it's a short period of time to put that around. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you. The only thing I would add is that the Economic Development Committee does meet monthly. So recognizing that some of you may need to go back and talk to your groups to see what your ideas might be. We don't have to have this for next week.
No. So if it doesn't come forward for next week, I'm just saying if there is something that you already had on the books or were thinking about, don't be afraid to bring it forward to one of the members of the committee or the staff members, but that we would also be meeting in May, at the last week of May, I believe. So if you're unable to get that forward for next week's meeting, that we would have a discussion in May for allocations. Leah?
Sorry. So if I recall correctly,
Oh, did she freeze? Oh, no. Oh,
improvement.
Oh, there she is.
And in terms of putting it towards the Turkey Fair, what I think we were going for was something within each little community that would improve how it looks and the perception of the village. And even though it's a small amount of money, we're thinking more along the lines of like sitting benches and getting people to sit around and enjoy the area, adding gardens. I know we have a lot of the flowers, we've already discussed all that, but adding benches and that kind of stuff. And with this amount of money, that's probably doable rather than, putting it towards the Turkey Fair or something that is already funded.
Yeah. And I think those are and a lot of the local groups, Leah, you may or may not be aware, a lot of them have already done a lot of that on their own. So this would be a good way to add on, which is part of the reason we wanted to come back to PEER, because they know where those sorts of benches, for example, or another flower bed, or even a dog washing station, where it might be appropriate for paws and disposing of debris, if you will. There's all those sorts of things that can make a local community more attractive and welcoming.
Yes.
And Ken, go ahead.
One of our members, Number 9 Gardens, is trying to put together a program in a community close to ours named Morton. And what they're trying to do is put up banners on Highway 15 to show off different touristy attractions. And our group is trying to help support them. Now what we're looking at, we've already approached the MTO and we've already approached Hydro. There are existing holders for banners back from the 150 year celebration. And these banners would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $500 a piece, but they would last between 3 to 5 years. So once again, you would try and promote the different communities and the different aspects of those communities that is important to them. So for example, in Morton, we're trying to put forward the hiking trail at Rock Thunder, the canoe and kayak, the docks at Morton, at the Morton Dam, as well as there's a couple of paintings out there from the Group of 7 from our community. So, but we would also be trying to promote some of the businesses like Wendy's Country Market, Number 9 Gardens, Wings Live Bait and Tackle, et cetera, et cetera. So we're moving forward with that and hopefully trying to get that up and running before the summer and when tourists start coming around. So this could be expanded to all of the communities in Leeds and Thousand Islands, and a lot of the work's already been done.
Excellent. So that's a great suggestion that maybe the Economic Development Committee could consider as well. I know that we have banners, or we have had banners in Lansdowne. I don't know if they've had passed their useful life date. I think that they might have in Lansdowne. I know that Wendy, you have had some in the village of Rockport as well. Is that correct?
I was going to say that we had put in the budget, or in the grant, we had put a grant in a couple times ago to replace our banners. We've had to take them down. They looked atrocious. And it was something we had put in, you know, how the Rockport Development Group, every village group puts in a request. And banners had been on ours for the last couple of years, and we obviously didn't get the grant money. So banners is something that I think is a really good investment. Yeah. So I think that's probably what you'll hear from, but I'll have to take it back to the group.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing that would help us is knowing what's happening with the Rockport strategic plan, and if any of it is going forward, because there were some things in there, and knowing what's going forward from that helps us to know what we should be raising money for.
Marnie's coming to the microphone. She can answer that question.
Thanks, through you. So to provide a bit of an update, we've been a little pushed back in terms of our implementation of the Rockport strategic plan. In speaking with David Holiday, they're going to be putting speed signs down there at some point this summer. He's going to be in touch with you, Wendy, in terms of talking to the group about where they should go and where they'll have the most impact. So originally we had planned on doing design for the roadway this year, but that has been delayed due to other projects. So I do have it in my work plan to start looking at some of the planning policy down there this year. So we have been delayed, as I said, in some of the implementation there. It has not fallen off the radar. We've just been managing our resources in terms of how we can do that. So I see more of the implementation of that starting later this year and into next year.
One of the things that I think would help the Parkway, it would help Rockport and the Rec Hall, is that we've had this parking proposal where the trucks and trailers park at random along the Parkway between the cemetery and the Parkway. That whole parking situation and the washroom situation up there, it's just the ideal location halfway along the Parkway for another washroom and for structured parking and a doggy station. And it's that whole space could be so much better utilized. And I realize it's a big project. It's not a $5,000 project, but that area could make a huge difference to the cycling that goes on the Parkway. And the washrooms that they have at either end of that bike path are amazing. What the St. Lawrence Park Commission has done with the washroom at Gananoque and the washroom at Butternut Bay. And to have something sorted out in that area, even if it can be done in planned and then incrementally done, would make a huge difference to the whole area, from cyclists to boaters to walkers. So to me, that's the area, but it's too big an issue to bite off and apply here unless it was broken down into chunks that could be done incrementally. So I don't know where that's going, but that to me is, now that the boat ramp is done and we've got a nice looking boat ramp, the next big issue for us is how do we utilize that whole space more effectively? And it's attractive or unattractive to when you enter Rockport and you see umpteen trailers and trucks parked every which way. That's sort of.
So Marnie can probably answer a little bit and I'll bookend it.
Yeah. Say thank you through you. So there was a preliminary design done for those lands a couple of years ago. That hasn't gone anywhere at this time, but part of the Rockport study as well looked at the warrants for pedestrian crossing on the parkway as well as the speeds on the parkway. So because that land is owned by the parkway, we need to have some more in-depth discussions with them around what they would entertain. We also need to look at the costs that would be required for the township based on the preliminary designs. There would be requirements for archaeology, stormwater management, grading, design, obviously construction, and then there's the maintenance. So there are significant costs associated with that. In addition, the Rockport study identified the need for pedestrian crossing in that location, because if we're going to put parking on the north side of the parkway, we have to be able to bring people safely down back into Rockport. And that also speaks to the speed limits. So there would be traffic studies and justifications. So it's a very significant undertaking that warrants further discussion with the parkway at this point in time to understand what their thoughts would be on advancing that initiative.
And I'll bookend it by saying that that initiative was quarterbacked by our former director of operations. But I will make a point of speaking with our current director to basically have his take, and if there's been any discussions with St. Lawrence Parks Commission, because we know that the St. Lawrence Parks Commission, for lack of a better term, is skint. They don't have a lot of money, but it doesn't negate the fact that there's safety concerns. Those lands have been used to haphazardly park boat trailers and trucks for decades, and needs to be addressed. So we do have good contact with them. It's just, it comes down to resources. Having said that, there's got to be ways that we can do simple things to potentially at least delineate or make it easier for people to park more cohesively on what is grass now. It's not perfect, but we need to press the St. Lawrence Parks Commission to manage that a bit better. Not to mention the need for the washrooms, because Rockport is sort of the halfway point kind of between Brockville and Gananoque. So, but I know there was even consideration of straightening out the road. So there was lots of things rather than coming down around the
Yes.
cemetery to potentially come straight off onto the parkway.
I think I sent the plans. We've had plans drafted up and actually met with the Parks Commission and the township back in
2019, I think.
2011 and 12, when I was on council. There was a meeting at the site with the mayor and the Director of Public Works and the St. Lawrence Parks Commission. The holdout that didn't come to the meeting was MTO. But those plans still exist, and I think I sent them to Dave when I first met him. But the big thing that Marnie mentioned that I think is not as expensive is the speed limit. Where the sign says Rockport, if the speed limit could be lowered on the parkway, just on that stretch, people are going to use that haphazardly, whether we get it done or not, but the speed limit could be, I'm just worried that there is going to be a death or an accident there.
Yes, and that is something we can do.
Speed limit, I think it would make a really positive step towards safety.
Thank you. We'll definitely take that back to St. Lawrence Parks Commission and we'll discuss where Dave is at, or where he has been with communication with the St. Lawrence Parks Commission, if at all, since COVID happened. But nonetheless, we'll follow up on it.
And if there's anybody wants those plans, I still have them. They're dusty, but I still have them.
Well, dusty plans are better than no plans. And
That's right.
on top of the work that's been done in the Rockport overview, then more information is always better than none. Okay, so I think we'll leave it at, if there is anything or any projects that the local settlement area groups would like to attack for high visibility within the next few months, to bring it back no later than the May Economic Development Committee, if possible. We'll do a quick sort of a tally on the banner stuff, because that is low hanging fruit that can make a big impact in all the settlement areas potentially. And we'll look at that and go from there. So I think we have quorum, because we've got Wendy, Susan, Peggy, myself, and is Ken considered a voting member? Or do we not? No, because the chambers aren't considered. We don't have quorum. So we'll have to wait to pass the minutes and the agenda and all that kind of stuff. But I still think it was a productive meeting to let everybody know where we're at and what we're doing. So we'll get back up to speed. Perhaps peer committee, would you like to meet back again in May? I think we had only scheduled another meeting somewhere in the fall, but in the event that there is something to talk about in regards to realigning funding, I'm happy to add a meeting to May if the clerk has availability. So EDC is on the 25th of May. We could meet the week before, which would be May the 18th. Is that something that the committee would like? And then hopefully some of the other members can be back as well. We'll make sure that we send the link for this meeting so that they can get up to speed rather than having to rehash all of this. But that if there's any projects that come forward between now and the end of May, that we can have a brief discussion, and it won't be a 2-hour meeting next time. But we had a lot to catch up on since we hadn't seen each other for a while. And then we'll be prepared for the Economic Development Committee following week. Okay. Okay, since we don't have quorum, there's no motion to adjourn. I'll just call it, and we'll look forward to seeing any suggestions for the Economic Development Committee to come forward. And if you need anybody, any help, you obviously have Katie and Trish and the CAO, who happens to be the complaints department. He takes all calls all times, but we're happy to help, and that's why we're here. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank
It
you.
was good to be connected.